Notre Dame did not have the manpower to stand up against it. And the problem, Notre Dame was missing a number of defensive linemen. Their starting nose guard, their starting two D, I think both starting two D tackles were injured or out. So they were going with backups. So that killed them because if you can't rush, you can't get a rush on a quarterback, it becomes a problem.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Odd Coaches Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Keith Adams, and on today's Throwdown Thursday edition, we discuss Championship Day with Ohio State winning the national championship. We'll get reaction in segment 2. We will talk about things in terms of a lot of changes with Title IX, and in segment 3, we will talk a little bit about the Knight Commission hearing with the NCAA and the things they're doing and not doing. So, hey, with that, joining us for segment 1, academic and athletic consultant for the CK Save Project and football parent extraordinaire, George Acker. George, how did you feel about, what's your reaction to the national championship game?
Um, well, personally, it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, but and that was for entertainment purposes.
strictly for entertainment purposes only.
But it was what we saw. Ohio State's been dominant all the way through the playoff. Whatever switch or whatever that was flipped, they knew what they knew what they had. They could out athlete just about anybody or everybody they faced, and they showed it again. I like the grit and the grit of Notre Dame by trying to make that comeback there at the end. But it was they went into a they went into a gunfight with 4 bullets, and Ohio State had 8. So that's basically what it came down to, man. Basically.
Man, so as we were watching the game, Notre Dame comes down on the first drive, and they ran that boy Riley Leonard like student body left right up the middle. I'm gonna give you a real old reference. They ran him like the Washington Redskins ran Larry Brown. I swear they just ran that guy through it. He physically looked gassed after like the first quarter. I'm like, wow, that's not good. But one of the things I definitely wanted to mention, and you alluded to it, was Notre Dame kept hanging around, and they had that thing cut to 8, and that last play, kind of took it away from it. But Ryan Day coached a magnificent game in the first half, and
Well,
Marcus Freeman coached a magnificent game in the second half.
well, wait a minute. I'm not giving any credit to Ryan Day. Chip Kelly coached an amazing game in that first half because some of those play calls were outstanding. That little that little wide receiver comeback rub route where they put the wide receiver on the side, faked like he was going out and then coming back, and everybody left him alone, and he was by himself to walk in the end zone. That was just genius. Chip Kelly was in his bag in the first half, and there was they Notre Dame did not have the manpower to stand up against it. And the problem, Notre Dame was missing a number of defensive linemen. Their starting nose guard, their starting two D, I think both starting two D tackles were injured or out. So they were going with backups. So that killed them because if you can't rush, you can't get a rush on a quarterback, it becomes a problem. I think that Notre Dame's linebackers and secondary are solid. But hey, it was what it was. They got outclassed at that point in time in the first half because Chip Kelly was in his bag. He was definitely in his bag, and you saw pure grit in the second half. That was all Notre Dame, not trying to give, fighting for their little piece of turf. And they just ran out of gas because when you go in a game, you got superior athletes. Eventually, the superior athletes gonna win that game. Won't win that out the longer it goes.
I gotta though say that they bought in. Notre Dame, you've got to give them credit. Marcus Freeman had them still believing that they could make a run, they could do something. And even I checked out on it and kept hearing from you guys that Yo, we might have a leprechaun in there.
Mhm.
So, Will, Captain for Life, Will Cotton is joining us. Any thoughts on the national championship game? What did you think, Ohio State, Notre Dame?
It was something I knew was going to happen. I don't know why George was talking about. I'm gonna take Notre Dame, dude. They've
Here
been
we go.
saying Ohio State is going to run through that playoff. I think they took the pedal off their foot. And you can't do that against a good team. You know, Marcus Freeman definitely has a good team, and they had that the one receiver that was just eating them up. I forgot his name. You guys could tell me his name much better, but he was eating them up. But yeah, the better team won, and they won just because they had better players. And at the end of the day, when the chips were down, they ran a fade, uh, and the best receiver caught, and that's it. The better team won, and but Notre Dame, don't sleep, because a lot of people didn't think they could even hang with them. And they're going to be a lookout. People are going to look out for moving forward. So nobody going to sleep. I think this is a different Notre Dame moving forward. But that's not the Ohio. It was Ohio's night to lose, in my opinion.
I will say
ahead.
that I'll give Ohio State a bit of credit where other programs lost their depth in the number of positions. Ohio State did not lose their depth, especially in that defensive front, because they can rotate dudes continuously in because they got multiple dudes in there. And when I say dudes, I mean dudes. And we knew they had them. I just thought that, yes, Will. I thought that leprechaun would come through one more time. He looked like he was going to. He looked like he was going to make it, but they ran out of gas.
Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
it was tough. Yeah, it was tough.
So in terms of bowl records, and I wish Mike King was here, the AAC went 6-2 in bowls. Maction went 5-2. The Big Ten went 11-6. That means 17 Big Ten teams played in bowls. The Sun Belt went 4-3. The SEC went 8-7. The Big 12 went 4-5. Conference USA went 1-4. Mountain West went 1-4. George, the ACC went 2-11. I'm gonna just let that sit for a second.
Let it
The
sit.
ACC went 2-11.
Yeah, and it makes it does not hold no water whatsoever. It says nothing about the conference. And the reason I say that is because no prominent player that was looked at, it might be draft eligible or draft worthy, and then anybody that has now said, "Hey, I'm out of here. I'm going to jump in the portal. I'm going for more money," played in any bowl game. The only teams that stayed intact were the teams in the CFP outside of Colorado. And with Colorado, that's because Dion had said we're gonna finish this, and the kids bought in. But you think every other team was playing with backups, redshirt freshmen, and people that hadn't played because nobody was playing, and you saw it across the board in every game. So it's every one of the bowl games, and that's where
George is correct. He didn't say one lie.
that's where the landscapes change.
What,
So
2-11?
I can't put. It doesn't matter. I can't put any records on what kids on these conferences when they get the bowl games because they don't take them serious anymore. You go look at your transfer. Go look at the transfer portal as soon as it opened, and people knowing that. Oh yeah, we're going to the Gator Bowl. Oh, I'm getting out of here. Either I'm getting drafted or I'm going to get some more money, and I'm out. They're not playing. So you look at the transfer portal is full. So
Yes.
you can't even go on the record. I mean, I sat here and watched Michigan beat up on Alabama,
Alabama.
and half of Alabama's dudes were in the transfer portal.
They also stopped playing. So
Yeah.
that's another thing to speak on what you're saying. If you bring in, just like Florida State, if you bring in guys who are not part of the culture, when you guys who don't believe and came here and was like, man, I came as a freshman and now I'm junior, your priorities are different, And when things get hard, you're like, man, I ain't playing. It's raining, man. We ain't playing for nothing. I'm done. So and that speaks to even Clemson. I'm on the flip side, Clemson. It's a balancing act. You don't want to get any transfers, but you were a couple players behind, and it ended up costing you. So like George says, I think they had two different, distinct sort of ideas in terms of success, and both failed miserably.
Miserably.
Florida State failed. Florida State failed, and Clemson did better, but it doesn't work.
Well, the Pac-12 was 0-1, and the Independents.
Pac-12
was 1-0.
What are you
They
talking
were
about?
1-0. They were 0-1.
The last thing, I really, this really becomes a question that they have to. I mean, they can keep it because people are going to continue to watch. But it comes down to what? There's no meaning to a bowl game anymore, especially when you got the CFP. There's really no meaning. I mean, yeah, we might get to see we get to see football, but at the same time,
not good.
I know it's not. Football is not going to be great. Most of your headliners are going to be gone. And the kids that you're like, oh, I want to see him. See this kid. He didn't only played in 4 games this year. He might be in the transfer portal. So it's not doing anything.
And to say we've lost a big part of college football with those bowls, because some of the times that I even remember growing up or watching those bowl games, Boise State versus Oklahoma, they would never play or things like that. I'm sure that, there's just other games that even matter, So to me, it's like you lose so many important games. And I thought that was the fun part of college football. You go to these games, the bowl is different. I think that, like I always say, the Duke Mayo Bowl, people hate it. I mean, they obviously not the best team, but they really make it about the bowl. They try different food with the mayo. They dump the head on the winning coach. It's fun to me. That's college, and I think they're moving away from fun and getting to like professionals, and that it's sad to lose, but money drives all everything. So I get it.
But this is and you just said it, money drives everything, because it used to be the bowl game was a big recruiting bid. You could always go in the recruiting season and say, hey, we won the Gator Bowl. Now it goes in the recruiting season. I got $2 million over here. You coming or what? So it's a whole different situation.
Yeah.
All right. So as we close this segment, the final AP top 25. We don't care about all of them, but we will say Ohio State's 1, Notre Dame's 2, Oregon's 3, Texas is 4, Pitt State's 5. We are. I mean, the 5th best team. Come on, man. 6, Georgia. 7, Arizona State. 8, Boise State. 9, Tennessee. And 10, Indiana. And we just want to let you know a couple. SMU was 12. Clemson ended up 14. Syracuse ended up 20. Nice finish from Syracuse. Hey, Will, UNLV was 23. And the quarterback's going to JMU. And Colorado.
That's full irony, as they call it. Isn't that what they call it? Full irony.
And Keith, don't you owe me some money off to that Penn State situation?
I've already paid the casino.
Thank you, Will. Oh, Will.
And last thing, the SEC had 7 top 25 teams. Big Ten had 5. ACC had 4. Big 12 had 4. The AAC had 2. The Mountain West had 2, and Notre Dame, the lone independent, was 1. So when we get back in segment 2, we'll start talking about all the legal issues, Title IXs, and night commissions, and all of those things. We'll be right back on the Odd Coaches Podcast. This is Dr. Keith Adams, president of the CKA Safe Project, with a question for you. Are you passionate about supporting student athletes? If so, then become an official member of the CKA Safe Project and make a difference today. With your membership, you'll be able to help us provide essential academic and athletic support to underserved communities nationwide. Join us in empowering student athletes to achieve their full potential, both on and off the field. Together, we can build a brighter future through education and sports. Visit ckasafeproject.org and choose your membership level now. $25 is a bronze level membership, $50 is a silver level membership, and $100 is a gold level membership. Be a part of the change. Become a member of the CKA Safe Project today. Welcome back to the Odd Coaches Podcast in segment 2. We have to get real. We have to talk about the potential implications of the House settlement. The NCAA had phone calls this past week from the Department of Education and the Department of Justice. And we don't want to take those calls. So let's talk to you a little bit about Title IX. Title IX of the Educational Amendments of 1972 prohibits discrimination based off of sex by schools that receive federal financial assistance, including K through 12 schools, colleges, and universities. In other words, if a school receives federal financial assistance, Title IX's prohibition on sex discrimination extends to all school programs and activities, including the athletic program. So the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights enforces Title IX. And when we say they enforce it, we're talking about you have to give equal opportunities for publicity, support services, and other benefits and opportunities and treatments for all students. That tends not to overly happen, but you have to kind of take them to court to show that they're not doing this. So the challenge is the Department of Education, it's not clear if they're going to interpret Title IX law the same way under the Biden administration as the incoming Trump administration. So it's all up to interpretation of the law. A second Title IX reminder in context. Title IX is federal law that prohibits sex-based discrimination in educational programs. And again, we talk about opportunities to play varsity sports and making sure that there's a proportional number. So if 50% of the school's athletes are women, then 50% of the school's financial aid for athletes must be allocated to women. Now, again, there's no guidance on payments, and it's still crazy. But for the 25-26 academic year, schools will operate with a revenue sharing cap of $20.5 million if the House settlement is officially agreed upon. And many schools were planning to allocate $15 to $17 million for football. That's not right. So with that, Will, I gave you a lot of information. You do HR. This has come across your desk. You also have been on the show where we cover all of this money that's coming in, $4 million for a quarterback, $3 million for this. Title IX clearly says there has to be some equity. What are you thinking about this?
They had Title IX before, and they had it because they were like, hey, we need equal representation, which is totally fair, and I just feel like you can't just throw a blanket on that and say, okay, well, yeah, women, equal rights for everybody. I think we're going to see a lot of court cases. We're going to see a lot of people suing people. We're going to see a lot of women suing or institutions, because if you don't have anything on paper that's really going to say, hey, this is you have to do, and you have to allocate this, and you have to do this. Universities are going to skirt around it. They're going to say, oh, we're not paying the school, we're not paying the team, the players. That's a donor. Oh no, that's an alumni. That's not us. So I think there's ways around it, and I think that anyone that is discriminated on, especially for money, should definitely sue. Now, to say that is, it's hard to say. Are you on playing volleyball or softball? I mean, no, nobody's turning in for that. If you're Ohio State, that's for football. But they're going to be making so much money. I think the right thing to do is to allocate the money and make sure that everybody is good. I know they're not going to do that, but it's going to be a long path. It's good that they started it, but it's going to be a long path, because at the end of the day, a lot of people don't respect women's sports, or even lesser sports, like fencing, things like that. So I think we'll see what happens. I think we'll get some lawsuits out of it. But it's good to at least start in the foundation and say, okay, this is where we want to go, and then we can build from there.
Well, we already have the lawsuits out there. But here's something to make sure our audience knows. If money from private sources ends up creating a disparity in the athletic department, it is possible that NIL agreements could trigger a school's Title IX obligations. If a school fails to provide equitable publicity, those students risk losing out on NIL opportunities. And ESPN reported last year that 55 athletic departments, or 84% of the then Power Five, mentioned men's teams more often than women's teams. And people are now watching. So this is not going to be solved. We just wanted to make you aware that the Department of Education provided some guidance, and that guidance is not very, very clear.
You know what they should do? They should allow you to bet on anything, like women's volleyball or women's softball or fencing. I mean, there's people there but think about it. If you can bet on it, people will watch to look at their ticket. So if you can bet on, and again, the summertime, all people are betting on soccer, they're betting on baseball. That's really it. There's nothing that we have some degeneratives who just go and they'll bet on women's softball and women's tennis and do all this stuff. So promote it, just give it a chance. I mean, people are going to bet on it, especially in the summer. So I would try it now. And that you can also get that create views. When people are looking, they're like, oh man, I got to watch my parlay, man. I got to watch this girl hit 4 spikes. I got to see if, so-and-so going to beat me in the fences tournament. It's just funny, man. It's different ways that we react to stuff. And I know we have to think of traditional ways to get views and stuff or people to do things in a way that that we wanted to do. I think that's one thing that could push a lot of views into different sports, just because it's different and it's costing me money.
Oh man! So fans, in segment 3, the Knight Commission, and we'll explain this, just had their conference. The NCAA had their conference as well. And we'll talk a lot more about all of these potential changes. We'll be right back on the Odd Coaches Podcast. This is Dr. Keith Adams, president of the CKA Save Project and author of Finding the Balance, My Personal Journey to Academic and Athletic Success. This book is your key to unlocking the secrets of being a successful student athlete. Drawing from my 30-year career as a teacher and coach, this instructional guide offers a unique perspective on achieving success in both academics and athletics. With over 15 personal stories and insightful anecdotes, Finding the Balance is a must-read for student athletes, parents, coaches, teachers, and administrators. Visit www.ckasaveproject.org to get your copy and start finding the balance today. Welcome back to the Odd Coaches Podcast, and in segment 3, Knight Commission hearing. So the Knight Commission met while the NCAA was going through their conference, and we want to give you some additional background on the House settlement. These conferences are referred to as defendant conferences: the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, the SEC, and the Pac-12, which is now the Pac-2. And the back damages are approximately $2.8 billion. So all Division I athletes participating from 2016 to 2024, estimated 95% of the damages paid to football, men's and women's basketball players in the defendant conference. So we've got a new model that they want to have out. Direct payments to athletes, and additional payments and benefits, commonly labeled as athlete revenue sharing by the media. Cap on institutions for new payments to athletes, new audit and enforcement procedures, and this is not subject to fair market value assessment. We also are looking at providing the opportunities for more scholarships, elimination of NCAA scholarship limits, and roster limits. So right now, FBS, football bowl series and the football championship series, you get 105 athletes. Women's soccer, you get 28 athletes. So here's some of the new requirements that they're looking for with the House settlement. All Division I athletes must report NIL compensation greater than $600. New process for fair market value assessment. Institution may facilitate NIL deals with third parties and no cap on third party compensation. But as we mentioned in segment 2, Title IX is applied to these items. So there's a Q&A document approved by Judge Wilkins. Can't go through the whole thing, but it's a significant new payments and benefits directly from institutions, new regulations for third parties, and there's an impact on roster limits. The unresolved issues, conflicts between NCAA rules and state laws, because a lot of state laws are contrary to this. Classification of athletes as employees, as you saw, some of you may have saw from Wisconsin being upset that a student athlete transferred without going through the portal. Objections and pending litigation. Potential new tax implications for athletes, and the tax man's gonna get his money. And finally, you've got Title IX compliance. So, Will, this is a lot to deal with. We talked last segment about Title IX. We talked this segment about trying to implement all of these, and there may be a pause to all of this because of the legality. It's a mess. Any thoughts on this as we try to figure it out, living day to day?
Well, I mean, number one, I think, like we've said previously, there was never any regulation or policy behind it, and now they're actually trying to do that now. It's hard to do that, on the back end because people are so accustomed to money, unregulated. So they're like, hey, what? Now I got to report this. Now I got to do that. Now I got to do this. So that's great. You know what I'm saying? Because we protect the kids in a way that they don't really understand yet. They're just kind of getting money and they're like, all right, have fun. So this is really good protection for them and creates a lot of equality. It's going to need some shaping. It's going to it's going to take some time. People will have to get accustomed to the regulations. Just like everything else in the world that we have, people will be upset when it first happens and woo 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 and complain and woo woo, and 5-10 years down the line it'll kind of smooth itself out, things like that. I think they're also just opening up a different type of business. I mean, now if you're literally like sports, if you're like a sports agent or sports industry sort of company, you have to start looking at, do I have to start bringing in lawyers? Because now I need guys to start looking at this stuff and skirting around it. And just like your taxes, like, we all don't say what we all got. Uncle Sam, we give Uncle Sam a little money, and don't get him wrong. We said we did this and we did that, but no, Uncle Sam, this is something else. This wasn't something that was given to me. It was a gift, or this was under the time, or give it to your grandma. Grandma can hold on to it. They're gonna have so many different ways to overskirting this stuff. It's like, well, you didn't get $50,000. Well, no, my grandmother got $50,000. I didn't get that $50,000. And that's a gift. So whatever. So I think it'll be just that back and forth thing that people will starting to, hide money in different ways and allocated money. And, I wonder if any of that people are going to start saying like, hey, I want money in Bitcoin. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's NFL players who took their contracts in Bitcoin. So I can imagine if there's an NIL, a college player, maybe already affluent, already has money, maybe his mother or father already an athlete, and he's like, hey, I don't want $50,000. I want Bitcoin. Give me that in Bitcoin, and how do you regulate that? Because it's not regulated now. So, you can't really say anything. So there's a lot of things that can go out. There's a lot of things that they haven't thought about because they don't have young people on those committees, unfortunately, but things will shape up. I think it'll be something that people will adhere to. They'll look back and think about the Wild Wild West and be like, man, remember in the beginning when we was just doing this
just getting money.
Yep.
So
it'll change.
So two questions come up often with myself and educators and panels on this show. One, what are we doing? And two, what did you think was going to happen? So when you have all of these things, and then you get the example from Wisconsin and the Big Ten issuing statements expressing disagreement on how the University of Miami recruited Xavier Lucas, who was expected to transfer there, you get upset. I got to give you this quote. Wisconsin wants the agreement, which is a quote binding 2-year NIL agreement and a separate agreement from the school's collectives to be standing. Well, if you have a binding agreement, that means there's some type of contract and there's some type of employee situation. And then the Big Ten, in a statement released soon after Wisconsin released a statement, said, quote, it's critical that agreed upon to obligations be respected, honored, and enforced. Well, again, Will, if we're doing agreements, doesn't it mean that there's some type of contractual obligation involved? Any response to that?
Yeah, it does. I mean, contracts are contracts. But again, I mean, some of those kids are 17. So they're not really adults. So, I mean, it's a lot of crying. It's a lot of, Wisconsin like is crying and stuff like that. It's because if I was an athlete, I would never sign a 2-year deal with a school. I would never do it, especially with all the money that's going on. I would never sign a 2-year deal. So if anyone to come with me and say, hey, well, I want you to come to Wisconsin, but you want to sign a 2-year deal, I'm not going. I'm not spending 2 years in Wisconsin. If I have a hot season in Wisconsin, then I'm going to USC. I'm going to Texas. I'm going to Miami. You're not tying me into that. So they're going to have to find a better way because you're not going to lock people in on things. You can't lock people in on jobs. They find a way out to get what they got to do. If you miss X amount of, hours, then we're going to let you go. And people will find that stuff out and they'll just roll out. They'll roll out. And these kids will have money. And these kids don't care. So don't give me stuff like, hey, you got to give me the money back. I'm not giving you nothing back. Bye. They think that they're adults like us. So we're like, oh, well, I got to really think about this and make this decision. But I disagree with any school that goes to me and says, you have to stay here for 2 years. And I mean, I wouldn't even sign with that. So it sucks that Wisconsin got they lost off on that player, but go get another kid. I mean, go get another kid. I mean, it's not that serious. I get why they're upset and they're being petty and they're just trying to oh, well, we were wronged and we want to do this and do that. Like, dude, at the end of the day, the kid's going to have to go where he wants to go. You can't say I'm gonna lock this kid in. It's not a team. It's a school. So if the kid actually says, well, Miami has a major that Wisconsin has, or if coach, if we're talking about education, that's the best way to say I'm going to a different school. And you can get rid of all this stuff, but we'll see. Mike King has better ideas than I do. So we'll see what he's got to say.
So Mike King is with us for segment 3. Mike is a over 20-year educator. We have had training after training on equity, diversity, Title IX, all types of things. Mike, this past week, we got a Title IX issue with the Department of Education releasing guidelines for the upcoming House settlement, saying that this counts and you can't give football that much money. In addition, you had the NCAA hearings trying to provide guidance on House. And then at the end of this week, we had Wisconsin and the Big Ten speaking out about a student-athlete transfer. Summarize this week in your own words, Mike. What are we doing and what did you think was going to happen? What do you think, sir?
If you can't keep a coach for 2 years locked in, how are you going to keep a player for 2 years locked in? There hasn't been one coach that hasn't said, I'm going to stay here forever, that isn't gone a month later when they get more money. So that doesn't work. The Title IX thing, I mean, that's going to make this whole thing blow up because the money isn't all coming directly from the schools, right? Like, so how do you legislate what money kids are getting from other places and then say it has to be even? And once it has to be even, well, then you're going to need to convince a whole lot of people to give money to sports they don't want to give to get money to the sports they do want to give to. I mean, government-wise, kind of reminds me like dark money where you have to – the 501cs can give half the money to the candidate, but the other half has to go to the organization. So if you want to give money to what you want it to go to, only some of it goes. That doesn't get as much. People don't want to do that. They want to give money to what they want to give money to. So it seems like some at women basketball players are getting a decent amount of money, but that's the outlier. It's not the norm. Whereas the backup cornerback is still going to get paid. So it's a mess. And there's again, I come back to the same story. Just wanted some beer money. You didn't want to do beer money.
Yeah.
Now this is what you got to deal with 24 hours a day. And you know what? Knowing that the NCAA has all this stress because they didn't want to give out beer money does make me a little bit happy.
Yes. Again, the further we go away from the purposes of school, the more problems we have with this. So as we wrap up, one, none of this is going to be solved this week, next week, or the week after. Two, slow down and try to provide yourselves some structure, because you keep going to court and lose. And three, it's a mess, and it's your fault. So I don't feel bad either. So on behalf of our cavalcade of stars, I'm Dr. Keith Adams saying thank you for listening and or watching the Odd Coaches podcast. And we'll see you on the sidelines. Till next time, take care.
The Odd Coaches podcast is sponsored by the CKA Save Project. The CKA Save Project is an industry leader in providing student-athlete academic and athletic support. From assessing student-athletes' academic and athletic skills, to measuring and monitoring student-athlete academic progress, to improving student-athlete time management and organizational skills, the CKA Save Project provides wraparound services for student-athletes from middle school through college. For more information, visit us on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org or schedule a free consultation with Dr. Keith Adams by emailing cka@ckasaveproject.org. We hope you enjoyed today's show. The Odd Coaches podcast drops new episodes every Tuesday through Friday on most weeks. Make sure you subscribe to the Odd Coaches podcast on Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow the Odd Coaches podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Odd Coaches. Follow Dr. Adams on Twitter and Instagram at CKA Save Project. In addition, follow Coach Mike Francis on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Franchise, spelled Coach FRANCHIZE. For more information about the CKA Save Project, please visit them on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org. See you next time on the Odd Coaches podcast.